Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about What If Deku Had a Family Reunion Part 1. If you guys enjoy this What If and want to see Part 2, comment down below. And let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗧𝗵𝗲 from L3. So let's start the video. 7-year-old Izuku curled up in a ball behind the hanging shirts and hoodies, inside of the closet in his room. His mother had hidden him there when Hisashi had come home. This had been something that happened every now and then since Izuku was diagnosed quirkless 2 years ago. Hisashi hadn't taken the news well. His mom tried to protect him to the best of her abilities, but sometimes Hisashi would get to Izuku and hurt him. Pressing his palms over his ears to block out the yelling, both angry and anxious screams, Izuku buried his face in his knees and waited until Hisashi would storm out like normal. But it wasn't like normal tonight. Izuku could feel something churning in his stomach. The yelling kept growing louder and louder, until Izuku had to reach for his noise-canceling headphones his mom bought for him for when it gets too loud. His world became silent as the headphones slipped around his ears. He lifted his head off of his knees and stared at the clothes in front of his face. He could feel the vibrations of Hisashi's stomps through the house, and the vibrations of 𝐭𝐸's terrified voice and Hisashi's screaming. It had been months since the last time Hisashi had come home. Izuku had grown used to just him and his mother residing in the house. He almost forgot he had a father. Almost. Like most nights Hisashi came home, Izuku waited until the vibrations of the stomping and yelling were far enough away from his room to quietly and delicately sneak out of the closet and make his way for the lone window. As quiet as he could, Izuku pushed open the window and climbed out, in his Spider-Man onesie, because Mama wouldn't let him get a Deadpool 1 and noise-canceling headphones. When his feet hit the damp grass, Izuku ran from the house. The boy ran until his legs gave out, and he fell to the ground. The grass beneath him was dry and coarse, yet still soft somehow. He pulled his knees to his chest. Pressing his forehead into his knees, Izuku sat there for what felt like a long time. The noises of the world blocked out. The sun started to rise in the sky by the time Izuku figured Hisashi would either be out of the house or passed out, and he thought it was safe to return home. What he didn't know was that there was no home to return to. Rubble. Rubble and ashes and scared people is what 𝗧𝗪𝗧 saw as he finally dropped onto the street, where someone called in for a fire. He walked up to Detective 𝗧𝗵𝗲 to stand beside the man. What happened? Fire broke out in one of the apartments. Neighbors claim they heard arguing and yelling earlier in the night. Say it's a regular occurrence when the husband comes home. The detective looked towards the hero. So it's suspected domestic abuse? 𝗧𝗵𝗲 nodded. Any casualties? Just the wife. The husband is missing, and the suspect for the start of the fire. The officers and other heroes couldn't find the son. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 nodded, taking in the information. He looked down to his left when he felt a pull on his pants. A green-haired child looked up at him. Mister, what happened? The child's voice was small, almost as if he was terrified of something. Or someone. A fire broke out, kid. Do you live in the area? The kid nodded and played with the cuffs of his onesie. Maycham. I went for a walk, cause Mama and Papa were talking about stuff they didn't want me to hear. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 looked at 𝗧𝗵𝗲 for confirmation. When the detectives left, I twitched in response. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 looked back at the kid. What were they talking about, kid? I dunno. Something about me. The kid looked up at the detective. All right, kid. Let's get you to your parents then. Yeah, 𝗧𝗪𝗧 looked down at the kid. No, mister. Mama said not to follow strangers. I can find her on my own. With that, the kid turned around and disappeared into the crowd of civilians. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 turned to the detective. Did anyone describe what the son looked like? 𝗧𝗵𝗲 looked at him. Green hair, green eyes, and short. They said he likes pre-quirk era heroes. Shit, 𝗧𝗪𝗧 hissed and whipped towards the direction the kid went off in. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 quickly made his way through the crowd, looking for any sign of the boy he just saw. He cursed himself for letting the boy leave so quickly, and just hoped he would be able to find the kid. He got to the edge of the crowd and still no kid. Where the fuck could he have gone? Izuku zigzagged through the crowd, carefully avoiding bumping into people. Once he got through the crowd, Izuku ran towards the park. Mama was dead. It was all Hisashi's fault. His fault. His fault. His fault. His fault. Hisashi had killed Mama. Izuku narrowed his eyes. He couldn't go to the police. He couldn't go to heroes. He'll become a hero, legal or not, and he'll hunt down Hisashi and make the man pay. Damn Izuku. You're 7 years old and already planning your first murder. I'm so proud of you, baby. Upon arriving at the park, Izuku made his way towards the edge of the forest behind the playground. He navigated his way through the brush and trees until he got to his favorite tree. Like all the other times he climbed this tree, Izuku kept a tight grip on the branches he climbed as he made his way to the widest branch that could hold his weight. The only thing about the branch that made him wary was that it was 5 meters in the air. Izuku swung his legs in the air as he thought of ways to get back at Hisashi. He knew, logically, that it would take more than a year to hunt down Hisashi. Izuku would need to follow leads of Hisashi and keep tabs on the man. It wasn't a solid plan, Izuku knew that, but it was a start. As Izuku was swinging his legs, he started rocking side to side and humming to himself. After an hour of this, Izuku started making his way down the tree. 3 meters from the ground, Izuku's foot missed a foothold, and the greenette went falling towards the ground. He hissed in pain as he fell on his wrist and foot, spraining and breaking them respectively. He'd have to wait a while to get back in action, but he could figure out other things to do with his time. He laid on the grass, arms and legs splayed out, and looked up at the tree. After 10 minutes of contemplating his life choices, "You good, Izuku? Like, I know your mom just died, but what life choices are you talking about? You're 7. Izuku sat up to look at his injuries. He held his wrist in his lap and looked at where it should have had a sprain. Weird. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. He next looked at his supposed broken foot and noticed nothing off about it. Is it a quirk? No, it can't be. I'm quirkless, right? Deciding to test his theory, Izuku looked through the foliage for anything sharp enough to cut himself with. Finding broken glass, Izuku picked up the biggest piece and held it to his hand. Let's hope I'm right about this. Izuku drew the glass from one side of his palm to the other and watched as blood trickled out of the wound. He scrutinized the wound as it closed himself and the blood stopped flowing. Izuku knew he had to write this down, but all his notebooks were at the apartment. Most likely burned to ash. He'd have to somehow obtain new ones. He looked back at his hand and curled it into a fist. Well, time to go find a place where I can stay, said no 7-year-old ever. Over the course of 6 months since that day, Izuku had learned more about his quirk and found a place to stay and somehow became a missing child. The ways in which he tested out his quirk were questionable, but Izuku needed the information. Some of which I won't go into at the moment, because this is a 7-year-old who repeatedly injured himself, minorly and majorly to the point where he almost died. Countless times. But I will say that on some of his test runs, he did get stopped by adults who were concerned as to why a child such as himself was sitting leisurely in the middle of the road. Either way, even as a 7-year-old, this child has no regards for his personal safety, and I'm low-key concerned. But back to Izuku. He was able to get the information he wanted, so he didn't see a problem with continuously injuring and killing himself. Though maybe that shouldn't be a good thing now that he thinks about it. Other than testing out his quirk, Izuku had to steal drugstore black hair dye to stay under police radar. He was a little hesitant about it at first, because he didn't want to lose the thing that connected him to his mama. But if he didn't want to get caught, it was a sacrifice he would have to make. He still has her green eyes though, so it's not all bad. He could walk around without a hood, so there's that. And green eyes were more common now than they were before quirks, so Izuku wasn't worried about his eyes being a giveaway to his identity. Now, Izuku walked down the street towards the hardware store, hood down and through crowded streets. After 3 months of Izuku being missing, he became deceased. He had heard of a funeral that was held for him, but he didn't go to see people lower an empty casket into the ground. Plus, he was still recognizable then, so he didn't want to be noticed. Either way, Izuku was able to walk freely in public without the worry of being noticed. Walking into the hardware store, Izuku was stopped by a worker with silver gray hair that reached down to their waist. Shouldn't you be at school? Shouldn't you be in a nursing home? Izuku bit back. Oh yeah, did he forget to mention that his personality took a whole 180? He supposes it's due to being on the street and having to find a way to survive. Gone was the timid boy. Present is the brazen and confident child standing before the hardware store worker. Izuku walked past the worker and made his way towards the steel pipes. He'd need to make a bow staff to practice with. After acquiring the pipes, Izuku made his way through the store until he found the hunting knives. To make himself look less suspicious, Izuku bought some chips and a couple candy bars. When the cashier looked at him weirdly, Izuku looked at them and smiled. All saccharine sweet and honey-like. a blatant lie to anyone who looked close enough. It was just enough to get the cashier to not question him further. Paying with the money he got, executing some debatable jobs and pickpocketing some vile-looking people, Izuku grabs the 2 bags carrying his purchases. Izuku quickly made his way back to the warehouse he had found and was inhabiting, for lack of a better word. It had 2 floors, the top floor mainly being office space, which Izuku was figuring out uses for, and the ground floor having few offices lining the walls adjacent to the wall the door occupied, leaving a wide space for testing projects and exercising. Upon opening the heavy metal doors, he heads towards the back of the warehouse where he started making what he likes to call his workshop. It's not at all professional, and it's tucked in the farthest corner office-type room away from the door. But it functions like he needs it to, and he understands the workings of it best. Izuku sets down the bag of knives and steel pipes on the face of the workbench, keeping the separate bag of chips and candy bars he bought in hand. He walks across the hall towards the room opposite his workspace, and steps into the room he had filled with an old mattress and dresser. There's a floor-to-ceiling glass door on the opposite wall from the door. The room has little to no decorations, but Izuku personalized it in his own way with a mess of blueprints, stolen notebooks, and tools strewn about on the floor. There's a borrowed blanket laying on the bed, taken from a government-owned shop. Not a family-owned shop. Never from a family-owned shop. No, he has morals. They may be a little skewed due to his living on the street for half a year, but they're there. Izuku's pretty sure he turned 8 somewhere in the time frame of him living on the street, but he's not quite certain of the fact. He knows when he started living on the street, it had been late fall, early winter. But now it was getting to the middle of summer, and Izuku's pretty sure his birthday was around this time. Even so, Izuku does not see a need to celebrate his birthday, especially if he can't remember when it is. He's 7, possibly 8, and living on the streets. Give him a break. He maneuvers his way around the mess on his floor and towards the mattress. Sitting on the mattress, he pulls out the chips and candy bars and begins snacking. He sits cross-legged on his bed for 10 minutes, eating the food he bought, before sliding off the mattress and onto the floor where blueprints lay. Right in front of him are the blueprints for the multiple weapons he plans on using. From guns to bow staffs, Izuku works out each and every kink that would cause his weapons to fail. He works like this until the light from the afternoon sun grows darker, and the sky begins to be painted with oranges, blues, and purples. He stands from his position on the floor, his stiff knees protesting with the movement, and grabs all of his finished blueprints. He makes his way back across the hall towards his workshop. He works through the night and into the early morning, only taking small breaks when necessary. And when the bases of his projects are near complete, Izuku plops down into the beanbag chair he had made not a month ago and rests his eyes for the remainder of the morning. While Izuku was thriving as much as a kid living on the streets could thrive, on the other side of Mustafu, 𝗧𝗪 Aizawa looked high and low for the kid from that night half a year ago. Sure, it had been half a year, but 𝗧𝗪 had a feeling in his gut that told him the kid was still alive. Even if the child was reported as deceased 4 months ago. The kid seemed smart, and something in 𝗧𝗪's stomach churns at the thought of a 7, maybe 8-year-old living alone on the streets. Being the emotionally stunted man that he was, 𝗧𝗪 had no name to put on the feeling, and would thus let it simmer in the pit of his stomach. So that's how Hisashi found 𝗧𝗪 when the blonde returned home after his shift at the radio station. Papers, files, and post-its strewn about the kitchen table, some open, some not, all while the dim light of the computer illuminated 𝗧𝗪's face. Hisashi sighed fondly. "Sho, babe. What are you doing?" Nothing in his tone was annoyed. Genuine curiosity and fondness laced his voice at the side of his husband. "Trying to find that goddamn kid," 𝗧𝗪 muttered. "I mean, he's a kid, Hisashi. He's 7, maybe 8, and living out on the streets." "Babe, it's been 6 months, Hisashi spoke carefully. "That's my point. He's been missing because I know he's not dead like the reports say for 6 months. 6 months too long." 𝗧𝗪 scowled at his inability to find the kid. Hisashi sighed and sat down across from his husband. "Maybe you're not looking in the right places. Do you want some help? An extra pair of eyes might work better." The blonde offered. The ravenet across from him grunted in response, before putting all of his attention back on the files in his hands. Izuku hissed in pain as he accidentally missed the nail he was hammering, instead hitting his index finger. A bruise started forming on his finger before it disappeared. That's another thing he learned about his quirk. Injuries like cuts and bruises don't scare. His old scars from when Hisashi and Katsuki never went away, even if he basically carved them off of his skin. It's like his body remembered each and every scar on him, though there weren't many before he got his quirk, and wouldn't let him forget them himself. Wow, okay. Depressing much, Izuku? He mutters to himself. Izuku shook his hand out, as if dispelling the slight pain. Obviously, that's not how pain works. But what does Izuku care? He doesn't, obviously, because the injury will soon go away. And maybe that's an unhealthy mentality to have about one's own self. But Izuku doesn't mind all that much. And maybe he should. But he lives on the streets, and obviously a situation like that would do something to the mind of an 8-year-old. It's a week later when Izuku finishes his project he had been working on, and actually leaves the warehouse to go to a convenience store for food. It's also a week later when Hisashi finally convinces 𝗧𝗪 to take a break from searching for Izuku, and go outside other than just on his patrols and work at UA, even if he doesn't have classes. A week later when Izuku in all his shoulder-length, dyed black hair, golden freckles, and green-eyed childlike glory bumps into 𝗧𝗪 while they're both walking down the sidewalk. The man grunts and looks down at the child, and a feeling of recognition washes over him. Yet he can't seem to place why. The child only looks up at the man, their eyes nor their body language not giving away anything. Then something registers in the man's mind that the child should be in classes right about now, because there are no schools with days off in the area. So he asks the most obvious question at the moment. Why aren't you at school, kid? Why would I be? The kid puts their index finger to their cheek and tilts their head. Innocence rolls off of the child in waves. Because there are no schools with today off in the area. Does your mother know you're skipping school? I never said I was in school, sir. The kid doesn't bother to answer the second question. No, you didn't. But you seem old enough to be in elementary school. 𝗧𝗪 takes a moment to take in the kid's appearance. Black hair, green eyes that look too dull for a child of their age, golden freckles that shoot a sense of familiarity down 𝗧𝗪's spine in a way that makes him think he's seen the kid somewhere before. He just can't place where. Maybe I am. Who knows? The kid shrugs as if they themselves don't know their own age. Right. How old are you then? 𝗧𝗪 knows it sounds sketchy. He also knows he himself looks sketchy. But this kid isn't directly answering his questions. Why should I tell you? You gonna kidnap me if I'm in your age range? The kid's eyes shine with something akin to amusement, as if they know what they're insinuating isn't the man's intention. No, kid, I just need to know you aren't skipping school. Maybe I'm 7, maybe I'm 8. The world will never know. Well, if that isn't the most cryptic answer 𝗧𝗪's ever gotten from a kid, the hero doesn't know what is. Mum's sick, so I stayed home to help her. Just going to the convenience store real quick. 𝗧𝗪 hums. Good kid, he thinks. Right, well, then I shouldn't hold you up, I guess. Take care of your mom, kid. The kid nods and starts walking away. When 𝗧𝗪 gets home, he'll start looking through the files he left on the table when his husband forced him to go outside and see the picture of the kid's face, even though the image is burned into his mind, causing him to yell out a motherfucker and slump down in his chair, sighing at the fact that the kid he just ran into not even an hour ago was the kid he had been looking for, because those green eyes and golden brown freckles looked way too familiar to not be a coincidence. It's a year later when 𝗧𝗪 runs into the child again, less of a run-in and more of a spotting them from across the street. The child looks slightly taller and less lanky, like they're not about to be blown over by the wind. Except 𝗧𝗪 doesn't realize it's the same kid this time. Yes, 𝗧𝗪 recognizes the green eyes, but the hair now has purple streaks in it that appear in the sunlight and make them look ethereal, and the child is taller than a year ago. Not by much, given they were still a kid, but it was enough to make a difference. No. 𝗧𝗪 doesn't realize it's the same kid until the child fully turns in the man's direction. 𝗧𝗪 spots those golden brown freckles that seem to have multiplied in the past year. Yet there's dark and heavy bags under those green eyes that should be shining with life. Yet they look so dull and muted, that 𝗧𝗪 has to wonder what happened to the child in the last year to make them look like he does on a bad day. Izuku noticed the hero without even turning towards him. He could feel the older man's eyes on him, scrutinizing him. Izuku was just out to buy some groceries. And by groceries he means instant ramen and some chips. And maybe some energy drinks if he feels like it. Izuku had been holed away in his warehouse for the past 2 weeks, and he was getting low on snacks. So like any rational person who can't die, but still needs to eat, would do, he went out to go replenish his snacks. Not legally. What did you expect? He's a 9-year-old living on the streets with no job. Sure, he could go to the police, but then he'd be sent to an orphanage. How would he get back at Hisashi for killing his mom if he let that happen? So like any sensible 9-year-old who wants revenge on their sperm donor, Izuku went off-grid. He's getting off track though. Where was he? Right. The hero across the street from him was scrutinizing him. Weirdo. Looking at a child like that. Izuku wanted to smirk and wave his fingers at the man, but he held back. Why? He doesn't know. Then the man started making his way towards Izuku, and the 9-year-old quickly slipped into the alley shadows. It was still bright out, so there weren't too many dark places to disappear into, at least for the people who don't know this area like he does. Izuku largely misjudged the older man's knowledge of the area. The man is an underground pro-hero after all. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 easily tailed the child. If the hero was anyone else, let's say like a normal, untrained civilian, he would have lost them. But he wasn't. He was a seasoned 5 years pro-hero, who was also trained in underground heroics. Hence being an underground hero. So no, he did not lose the child who was obviously trying to shake the man off of their tail. Sure, 𝗧𝗪𝗧 had connected some dots with Izuku Midoriya and the kid he was currently chasing, but he wasn't 100% sure they were the same person. They had the same eyes and freckles, sure, but their hair and personalities were very contrasting. Izuku Midoriya's file said he was a kind and caring boy. The kid he was chasing was, well, he wasn't entirely sure since he's only had one other interaction with the kid, but from who he interacted with that day, the kid was sly and knew how to lie, obviously. The kid turned a corner into another alleyway, and 𝗧𝗪𝗧, like the responsible edelthero he was, followed him. Why are you chasing a child, old man? Did you change your mind and decided I'm your type? 𝗧𝗪𝗧 only rolled his eyes. This snarky little shit. That's one point of the kid, not being Izuku Midoriya. I'm flattered, but I, myself, am not into older men. Little creepy if you ask me. Look, kid, I just want to ask you some questions. And what if I don't want to answer those questions? The kid jumped on the lid of a dumpster and started climbing a fire escape, pulling up the ladder behind them. I won't make you. But can you at least listen and then decide? 𝗧𝗪𝗧 followed the kid up, grabbing the railings with his capture scarf. I'd rather not. See, I have an appointment with a convenience store a few blocks down. They're about to give me some free stuff. The kid pulled himself up onto the roof. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 landed on the edge of the roof and looked at the kid across from him. So you just confess you're about to rob a store to everyone who chases you, or no? Never said I was robbing them. I just said they were going to give me free stuff. Could mean I have a coupon. Could mean they feel bad for little ol' me. Why would they feel bad for you? The kid smirked and jumped onto the next roof over. Now why would I tell you that? 𝗧𝗪𝗧 instantly followed after them. This chase went on for 15 minutes too long in 𝗧𝗪𝗧's opinion, before the kid tripped over their own feet. Shit biscuit. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 had to hold back a snort while he wraps the kid in his capture weapon. Sorry, man. Not really into bondage. You're 9. Yeah, 9 inches deep in your... Before the kid could finish that god-awful sentence, 𝗧𝗪𝗧 looped a strand of capture weapon around their mouth. Right. So how about we don't finish that sentence? The kid only shrugged. Their eyes shone with mirth and some other emotion 𝗧𝗪𝗧 couldn't quite discern. I'm going to set you down now so we can talk. Are you going to try to escape? The kid shook their head in acquiescence. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 set the kid down and slowly unwound his capture scarf from around their torso and mouth. The kid huffed out a breath, then sighed and sat across from the hero. What do you want to know? The hero followed the kid's lead. Why were you running from me? Wouldn't you run from a strange old man making his way towards you? The kid asked, not directly answering. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 saw the logic in that. It wasn't 100% logical, but it made enough sense. I'm not that old, 𝗧𝗪𝗧 grumbled. The kid snickered. What's your name? The kid smirked, and without hesitation replied, Jeff. Sure it is. The kid shrugged one shoulder then smirked. Do you know a kid about your age by the name Izuku Midoriya? He might as well try. If the two of them are connected in some way, 𝗧𝗪𝗧 wants to know. You mean that dead kid that was missing for like 2 months? Yeah, I don't think he's dead though, so do you know him? Maybe, maybe not. What's it to you? Is he your type? You into dead people? Can't believe I'm talking to a necrophiliac. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 grimaced behind his capture scarf. Never pegged you to be into kids and dead people. Isn't that like illegal? I'm not a pedophile nor a necrophiliac. I'm sure. Well, I gots to go. Late for my appointment with that convenience store. The kid shot up and quickly jumped away from the hero. Well, that was uneventful. I got no information at all. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 grumbled as he stood and made his way back to his apartment. Izuku slowed down when he reached the convenience store. He ruffled his black and purple curls before entering the store. It was pretty empty, with the cashier being the only person in there. There were a shit ton of sketchy people outside of the store, but that was different. And who would mug a 9-year-old anyway? No mentally stable person, that's for sure. Izuku entered the convenience store doors and walked towards the corner of the store that had no cameras. Or no fake cameras. Izuku checked a while back. The cameras are fake and just there to scare a person into not stealing. Makes his job way easier. Pulling out his blue backpack that he definitely didn't steal from a different store from underneath his hoodie, Izuku sent one more look towards the front, then began stuffing as many snacks in as he could. He picked out one small snack and drink to buy so as not to look too suspicious. Walking out of the store, Izuku walked past the thugs and made his way back to the warehouse. He has a feeling the cashier knows he steals from the store, but just doesn't do anything about it. Dear readers, do you have any idea why the cashier might not have done something about a 9-year-old stealing from their store? Maybe pity? Sympathy? Compassion? Understanding? Other words for pity. If you thought that, you're wrong, sorry. The real reason the cashier doesn't give two shits about a 9-year-old thief is because, why would they? The area they're in isn't the greatest, and the only people really protecting it are vigilantes and the occasional underground hero here or there. Sure, it's better than some of the other districts, but it's still shitty and sketchy in its own right. So really it's not about the person's age or pity or whatever you want to call it. It's just the people running the stores don't feel the need to stop desperate people from taking their merchandise when everyone is just trying to survive. Still, Izuku makes it back to the warehouse and deposits his backpack on the mattress in his room, and instantly gets back to working on his previous projects, now that he's got food and drinks. Hisashi had not expected to come home to his husband, slumped down at the dining room table with his head in his hands. He carefully walked behind the man, making sure to keep his footsteps loud so as not to alarm the other man. Hey Sho. HM. You run into the little listener? I think so. But they don't look anything like Midoriya Izuku, and they won't give me straight answers. So what happened? Nothing. They were cryptic as fuck, and were a little shit the entire time. Hisashi ran his hands through his husband's hair, a way to calm him down after stressful situations. Sho hummed and leaned into Hisashi's hands. The two husbands stayed like that for the better part of an hour before 𝗧𝗏 ended up pulling away and walking to the bathroom to clean up. Hisashi made his way to the kitchen to start on dinner. He had a feeling 𝗧𝗏 hadn't eaten at all, and had most likely just stayed at the table stressing over the kid. Over the time that the kid had been missing, and then presumed dead, 𝗧𝗏 had run himself dry and barely taken care of himself, so Hisashi took it upon himself to help his husband in any way he could. Hisashi heard the shower turn on and smiled to himself. Humming along to the song playing on the radio he didn't even notice was on. Hisashi went about making dinner while his husband took a shower. When 𝗧𝗏 came out of the bathroom, hair dripping wet and towel wrapped around his waist, Hisashi had already plated the food and placed it in their usual seats at the table. 𝗧𝗏 disappeared into their shared room before re-emerging 5 minutes later in one of Hisashi's shirts and a pair of bright pink sweatpants he and Nimiri had bought for the Ravenet as a gag gift. He wore them in spite, and everyone knew this. What'd you make? Just some soba. Nothing too much. 𝗧𝗏 nodded and sat down. We should go to the store soon. Probably. Itadakimasu. Both men said simultaneously before eating and moving into easier conversation. Izuku looked at the calendar he hung on the wall from where he was sprawled out on his mattress. There wasn't a specific reason as to why he looked at the calendar. He just wanted to. He wasn't doing anything today, so he was bored out of his mind and restless too. Sure, he could work on more projects, but that didn't seem like it would unboard and calm his mind. Unbored isn't a word, you dumbass. Izuku sighed, sitting up from his position on the mattress. He thought going out and walking around to help calm down. What's the worst that can happen? He gets mugged, killed. It's not like he can die anyway, and he has very little money that he manages to pickpocket from unsuspecting people on the street. Getting off of the mattress, Izuku walked to his very small pile of clothes that he had and threw on the semi-clean clothes. He says semi-clean because they're rarely worn, but they're also stained with mud and oil from when he does wear them. Dubbing himself good to go, Izuku makes way for the warehouse doors. The cold night air hits him in the face upon opening the doors, and Izuku breathes in the fresh air. It helps calm him some, yet not enough, so he continues forward on his walk. 15 minutes into his walk, he finds himself accompanied by a cat. He's not complaining. She's a really cute cat actually. Her fur is an ash gray, and her paws are white almost like she's wearing socks, so he decides to call her Socks. Creative, he knows. Her eyes are almost a sea green, and a white stripe of fur on her nose travels down her muzzle. Izuku holds out his hand for her to sniff, and she does so excitedly, bumping her head into his hand when she feels satisfied. Izuku complies with her and starts to pet her head. Eventually, she gets bored of walking herself and jumps onto his shoulders. Izuku giggles under his breath and pats her head as he continues walking. He doesn't know where he's going until he hears a scream from an alley farther down his path. Then he sprints and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 in annoyance at the change in speed. She doesn't jump down though, and instead digs her claws into his shoulders. He gets to the alley and skids to a stop, placing a hand absent-mindedly on 𝗧𝗵𝗲's torso, so she doesn't go flying off his shoulders. Immediately taking in the situation, Izuku assesses the 3 men pinning the 2 girls against the wall. Sexual harassment, leading to potential rape. Yeah, not on his watch. Well, I'll be fucked, he says, gathering the men's attention. The biggest man growls at him. Get lost, kid. This isn't the kind of stuff you should witness. What? Rape? Sexual harassment? 'Cause I've witnessed a shit ton of fucked up stuff in my life, and this doesn't even come close. Damn Izuku and his lack of filter. Well, why don't you try me out for size? I bet gross men like you like little boys like me. One man noticeably salivates at the thought, and Izuku internally cringes. Yeah, that bitch is going down first. The other 2 men growl and Izuku knows he doesn't have his weapons, but he did spot a pipe on the ground a little ways away. Come at me, bitches. The man that was salivating at Izuku's suggestion was the first one to lunge at him. He expected as much, but it was still disgusting to see. It was like the man thought that if he got to Izuku before the other 2, then he'd get to have some fun. Sucks for him because Izuku won't let the man touch him. He'd rather die over and over again before he lets that happen. The man outstretched his palm towards Izuku touch-based activation. Maybe something to do with complying if what he intends to do with me has anything to do with it. Leaving the rest of himself wide open. Izuku took the opportunity to duck under the man's hand and jab his elbow into his solar plexus. The man doubled over, gasping for breath, and Izuku took the moment to axe kick him in the back of the neck. With the first man down, Izuku turned to the other 2 men before subtly signaling to the women to run. He really shouldn't have expected them to listen to him, given they're scared and most likely in shock at a 9-year-old boy taking down a man 3 times his size. He was honestly just as surprised as they were. He had only watched a few videos online about basic self-defense and the most effective moves to use in a fight. You brat. The man with an elephant trunk on his face growls. Izuku hears 𝗧𝗵𝗲 hiss at the man in warning as he crouches down closer to the ground. He glances at her. Her hackles are raised and her claws are visible. She almost looks twice her normal size. Maybe she has a quirk that makes her look bigger. No, don't be dumb, Izuku, she's a cat. Probably just a trick of the light. He brushes the thought of 𝗧𝗵𝗲 having a quirk off and focuses back on the elephant-nosed man. Yo, dick-face. Okay, he should really stop antagonizing these guys more than he already has. Yeah, he doesn't think he's able to do that, sorry. Look, a mouse. Okay, he did not expect the man to squeal and run into a wall, knocking himself out in the process. He theorized that the man had the mannerisms of an elephant, and since they're afraid of the small creatures, he assumed the man would be too. He honestly didn't expect him to knock himself out. Maybe the guy was already afraid of mice separate from his quirk, and the elephant mannerisms just multiplied the fear. Yeah, he'll go with that. Well, would you look at that? 2 of your men are out. You gonna come at me, or you gonna run away before the police get here? The police part might be a bluff, but the guy didn't need to know that. Yeah, okay, whatever. You think the police would believe a snot-nosed brat over an adult? The man sneered, spit flying from his mouth. Gross. I hear there's a detective with a lie-detecting quirk, so yeah, I do think so. Izuku shrugged and dropped low again, getting ready for the guy to lunge at him. So imagine his surprise when a man who he swears he's seen before descends down on the man's back and ties him up with a strange bondage scarf. Oh, he has seen the man before. He'd know that BDSM scarf anywhere. Mr. Necrophiliac Pedophile. Yeah, he knows the man's neither of what Izuku accuses him of being, but it's fun. Yo, what's up, Mr. Necrophiliac Pedophile? The man audibly groans at the nickname. Is it really a nickname though? Kid. I thought that was you. What can I say? I love antagonizing rapists. Izuku shrugs like he's talking about the weather. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 takes her place back on Izuku's shoulders, right? Well, are you hurt anywhere? Nope. Izuku pops the pea and turns on his heel to leave the alleyway. Welp, I'll leave it to you then. 𝗧𝗪𝗓 watches the kid run out of the alley. A cat on his shoulders like she isn't even there. Sighing, he restrains the other two men and turns to the women, who are still there. I'm pro-hero Eraserhead. The police are on their way, and they'll need your statements. Do you mind standing at the opening of the alley so they can find where we are? The women nod and make their way to the opening. It's a very long and awkward 10 minutes until the police arrive and 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝐻𝐵 is taking the women's statements. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 hands off the offenders to the police to cuff and take to the station. 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝐻𝐵 turns to him and 𝗧𝗏𝗃 just stares the most done with life stare he can muster. Which isn't hard, but still. The kid got away, and now 𝗧𝗏𝗃 has to deal with it. He's honestly tempted to hunt the kid down and take him back to the apartment where he can be fed and have a warm place to stay. But that would negate the goddamn trust he's trying to earn with the kid. And it might make the kid's nicknames for him worse, so he'd rather not. The women said that a boy around 9 or 10 was the first to arrive on the scene. Said he antagonized them and offered himself up. 2 of the men didn't take it, but 1 did, and the kid took him out. 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝐻𝐵 stated, looking over his notepad. Not quite sure about the first part, but when I got there the kid was clearly antagonizing the men. Got one of them to knock himself out because he said there was a mouse. The hero informed the detective and watched the man write down the information. Do you think they're a new vigilante? 𝗧𝗏𝗃 shrugged. I don't know, maybe, but most likely not. I've seen the kid around and the few times we've interacted. He doesn't seem like he would be a vigilante. Maybe I'm wrong though. Right, well I've got to get back to the station, and you probably got to get back to your patrol. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 nodded and said bye to the detective, before pulling himself up to the roof of the building next to him by his scarf. Izuku laid down on the mattress, socks curled up on his chest purring, and stared at the ceiling. Maybe he could become a vigilante. Might make it easier tracking down Hisashi. Not his father. That man lost those rights when he killed his mom. Socks, purring picked up in volume in response to Izuku's low growling he didn't notice he was doing. Forcing himself to calm down, Izuku moved a hand to Socks' fur and began absent-mindedly petting her. He doesn't know when, but he falls asleep like that, foregoing a blanket. The light from the moon shining in from his floor-to-ceiling glass window. There's no dreaming that night. No awful nightmares accompany him in his sleep, making him wake up in cold sweats. Only a peaceful void of nothing where he floats for what feels like minutes, but must be hours. He said it must have been hours, and it has technically been hours, but 4 hours isn't enough time, damn it. When he said hours, he was talking like half a day, not whatever this is. Grumbling, Izuku rolled off of the mattress and laid face first on the floor for a good 30 minutes. He needed coffee. Oh yeah, he doesn't have coffee. Kami, why does the universe hate him? He just wants to sleep forever. But he knows he can't until Hisashi is put 6 feet under. Pushing himself off the floor, Izuku makes way for the door. Socks gets under his feet on the way, and he falls face first onto the floor again. Socks, she mews at him and butts his cheek with her nose. He lets out a huff and pushes himself back up. Yeah, I need coffee too. She mews at him again, and they both leave the warehouse, Socks on his shoulders purring against his neck, and backpack hidden under his hoodie. The rising sun cast an orange hue around Izuku as he walked down to a convenience store. Too sentimental, but whatever. I just need my coffee and Socks need some kind of food. Izuku turns the next corner and arrives at the doors of the 24-hour convenience store. The bell above the door dinged as he stepped inside and Socks mewed in his ear when it did. He reached up and patted her head in response and walked to the back of the store where his canned coffees would be. He pulled his backpack from under his hoodie and stuffed as many canned coffees as he could in it, with some extra space for Socks' food. He grabbed 1 extra can to pay for at the front, before putting his backpack back under his hoodie. He made his way to the prepackaged deli meat and repeated the process of putting more in his backpack and taking one that he would pay for. He left the convenience store with 10 total cans of coffee and 5 total prepackaged deli meat containers. Hopefully he could get back to the warehouse with little trouble. Like running into that underground hero. That would suck. Especially if he got caught and couldn't finish what he set out to do. The only one walking away alive from Izuku's hunting will be Izuku. Because technically I can't die. But that's not important. Hisashi is still mortal, so sucks to suck. Izuku groaned when he spotted the underground hero across the street. He had no idea why the man would be out this early in the morning, and had assumed he would go back to wherever it is he lives and sleep. You know, 'cause he's an underground hero whose patrols are late into the night and early in the oh, for the love of all fucking deities. The man's probably on his way home right now. Izuku slipped into the next alley in hopes of getting away from the man. Socks watched behind him like she was a lookout, and he found it funny. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 was on his way home after a very late patrol. He looked at his phone for the time and read 6 a.m. He looked up from his phone only to see the kid. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 had a gut feeling might be related to Izuku Midoriya, and his new companion cat slip into an alley. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 wanted to follow after the kid and ask him more questions about Midoriya, but he was tired, and he had a feeling the kid would only give him vague and slightly cryptic answers. So no, he didn't chase after the kid that kept calling him a necrophiliac pedophile every time 𝗧𝗪𝗧 managed to catch the little shit. Instead, he took a quick and blurry picture of the kid's back and walked back to his apartment, where his husband was most likely waiting for him. He was right, because as he took one step from the Jenkin after towing off his shoes, he was met with his loud blonde husband hugging him with an already hot cup of coffee in hand. Hisashi handed the mug to him, and 𝗧𝗪𝗧 took it gratefully. It had been a long night for the raven-haired man and an even longer patrol. Tsukachi had him looking out for that kid to make sure they didn't become a vigilante, but 𝗧𝗪𝗧 was already looking for them. If only for different reasons, but adding potential vigilante to the list won't really affect him in any way other than a headache, at least he hopes not. Outé? Show? 𝗧𝗪𝗧 looked at his husband and hummed in response. You were spacing out there for a minute. Anything interesting happen on patrol? Just ran into that kid taking down 3 men 3 times his own size and get away without a scratch. Also had a cat this time. Now Tsukachi's having me look out for the kid as a potential vigilante. So that's definitely not going to be a headache, 𝗧𝗪𝗧 said as he walked to the kitchen to grab a nutrient pouch. He saw Hisashi roll his eyes fondly out of the corner of his eyes, and 𝗧𝗪𝗧 smirked as he continued sipping the pouch. Melon. Nice. Well, do you want me to keep an eye out for the little listener as well? Hisashi asked. 𝗵𝗃. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 handed over his phone with the blurry photo of the kid's back. It's blurry, but you can get the gist of what he looks like. Seems like he has a cat with him at all times now. So there's that. Oh, and his eyes are green too. Alrighty, I'll keep an eye out for him on my patrols. Hisashi kissed 𝗧𝗪𝗧 on the cheek, then made his way to the Jenkin. Make sure you get some actual sleep. I know you don't have a class, but sleep is important. It was at this moment 𝗧𝗪𝗧 noticed Hisashi was dressed in his hero outfit. Going to school? Well, unlike someone, I still have a class of little listeners all ready to learn some rocking English. Hisashi cheered, pumping his fist into the air. Right, okay. Well, have fun. I'll probably be around after lunch to work on some paperwork Nezu wants me to do. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 grumbled. Right. Bye, see you later. Hisashi called out before leaving the apartment. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 walked back over to the kitchen and set down his now empty mug of coffee and nutrient pouch. He then made his way to the bathroom to take a quick shower and brush his teeth before trudging to his and Hisashi's room and falling asleep under the blankets. Izuku fed another piece of chicken to Socks. He glanced up at the calendar and noticed the date. Mom's birthday. Ah, shit stains. Izuku jumped up from his position on the floor and ran to the office room, where he kept some of the only things left of his mother, Socks curiously following behind him. There wasn't much left, but it was enough for Izuku to continue on the project he had been making. A small quilt. It wouldn't be big enough for a full-grown adult, but it would be big enough for Izuku to just wrap around his shoulders when he felt like it. Socks muted him and butt her forehead to his as he sat on the floor to work on the quilt. Izuku had to stop himself from theorizing she had some kind of quirk, empathy or otherwise, lest he get distracted. So he set to work on the almost done quilt, Socks purring curled up against his thigh. He didn't need anyone else. Just him, Socks, and an old picture of Mom he found after her death was all he needed to feel happy. Izuku didn't notice the sun rise higher in the sky and eventually set as he continued working on the quilt. He had poked himself a few times, but each time he just waited for the small, almost unnoticeable, hole on whichever finger he had poked that time to go away. Around the time the sky was going completely dark, Izuku excitedly lifted the finished quilt up in the air and exclaimed random things with enthusiasm. Socks seemed to look on proudly at him, which made him even more excited. He started dancing around the room holding the quilt above his head. Socks kept relatively quiet during his excitement, which made him ponder the idea of her having an empathy quirk again. When Izuku caught a glimpse of the now night sky outside the window in the office, he stretched his arms and turned to Socks. Let's go outside. Yeah, for a walk? Socks muted him, and he smiled. You're right. I should leave my quilt here. Don't want to ruin it if we get into trouble. Now do we? Izuku said as he set the quilt down on the mattress when he arrived back at his room. He grabbed a less oil and soot-covered hoodie, slipping it over his head. Once the hoodie was over his shoulders, 𝗧𝗏 took that as her cue to take her place on his shoulders, like the queen she is. They made it out the warehouse doors and walked down the street at a leisurely pace. 𝗧𝗏 chirped in his ear every so often as Izuku stayed aware of their surroundings, listening for anything and everything, even the smallest noise. Unless he came across a crime, he wasn't about to go looking for one. Being a vigilante sounded like one of the easiest ways to find Hisashi. But Izuku wasn't trained yet, so that was a no. And sure, he could just heal his wounds easily with his quirk, but he'd prefer not having to do that every time he got into a fight. So a nice leisurely stroll it was. And if he so happened to come across a crime, then maybe 𝗧𝗏 would help him like last time. The universe just loves me, I know it, Izuku thought, rolling his eyes as he spotted a certain underground hero jumping rooftops. Yup, definitely the universe's favorite person. You 𝗵𝗃𝗲. Why is this happening? Gotta fucking stay in the alleys now. 𝗧𝗏 mewed at his clear irritation at seeing the hero. It's not that he didn't like Eraserhead. No, the man was a great hero. It's just that he kept trying to either catch Izuku or get information about Izuku from Izuku, not knowing he was talking to the kid he was looking for. And Izuku couldn't get caught yet, because if he gave information about himself to a hero, he wouldn't be able to complete his goal. Anyways, Izuku quietly made his way through the alleys, keeping an eye out for the rooftops above him, just in case the Eraserhead spotted him. So to the alleys he kept for the night, and there were no crimes he had to get involved in. Thankfully. Izuku just wanted to take a leisurely walk before going to bed. The universe took pity on him, it seems, because he was able to walk to a park without trouble, and stay there for some few odd hours, before heading back to the warehouse and falling asleep on his mattress, 𝗧𝗏 curled up in his side. It had been 2 months since 𝗬𝗏 had last fully seen the kid. He had only been able to catch quick glimpses of him, but other than that, when 𝗬𝗏 tried to follow the kid, he lost him. Him, a pro hero, lost a child to the back alleys and crowds of the area he patrolled. It was getting frustrating that he kept losing the kid, but he persisted and tried to keep as calm as possible. Who knows, maybe his patience will pay off, and he'll be able to speak with the kid again. For now though, he'll keep his mind on his job of patrolling the streets. He could just keep an eye out for the kid. Kami. This really wasn't the most ideal situation, but it was doable. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 cats settled on his shoulders like they weren't parkering. It was kind of bizarre to see, but at least the kid was all right. 𝗧𝗏 decided to follow the kid on the rooftops as well, keeping up with them throughout the whole thing. Only when the kid stopped jumping did 𝗧𝗏 send out his capture weapon and wrap it around the kid. "Aw, come on, man. Pedophiles shouldn't be allowed to have support gear." The kid groaned. "Not a pedophile." 𝗧𝗏 glared, quirk itching to activate. "Right, and I'm not pansexual." The kid retorted. 𝗧𝗏 will admit that caught him off guard. It's not every day someone just blatantly tells someone else their sexuality if they're strangers. The kid had guts. 𝗧𝗏 will give them that. "Still doesn't make me a pedophile, problem child." "Ooh, tilde, so I have a nickname now?" the kid teased, a lilt to their tone. "Don't say it like that." 𝗧𝗏 sighed. Why not? Izuku was having fun, and Socks was purring up against the nape of his neck. Now most people who were hiding from heroes, and most likely police, would be worried about a hero seeing their face up close. But not Izuku. Izuku knew the shadows of his hoodie would keep his face out of view, and his hair was dyed, so it didn't really matter all that much to him. And if he got caught, he could just escape. A few cut-off hands and dislocated joints wouldn't do anything to him. They'd heal. They'd hurt, but they'd heal. "Because it's insinuating something, and it makes me uncomfortable," the hero replied. Izuku may have been one to tease others ruthlessly and not let up. But if someone said they were uncomfortable, he respected their boundaries. It really wasn't that hard, and Izuku really did not like making people feel uncomfortable around him. Right, sorry." Izuku tried to lift his hands in a placating gesture, but his arms were restrained to his sides thanks to the capture scarf thing. "Boundaries, I got you, man." If Izuku noticed the hero's shoulders untense at those few words, he didn't say anything. The hero seemed to like his privacy, so invading it would cross a boundary Izuku could clearly see drawn in the dirt. "Did you need anything from me then, Mr. Eraserhead?" Izuku asked, tilting his head. Socks mewed in his left ear, and Izuku didn't even try to hold back the soft smile that his lips slipped into. "Just a few questions. You can skip them if they're too personal for you." Eraserhead seemingly ignored the use of his hero name. "Ridgio then." Let's get this show on the road, Izuku said, wiggling a bit to be let down. The second the hero set Izuku on the roof, he sat down pretzel style. Socks jumped down from his shoulders into his lap. With both hands, he playfully patted the rooftop in front of him as a signal for the hero to sit down too. When the hero did sit down 2 arm lengths away from him, Izuku smiled, tilting his head to the side slightly. It was a silent question for the hero that Izuku knew the other would understand. Right. I haven't seen you in a while, Eraserhead awkwardly said, probably not sure how else to start. Well, I'm not dead. Not that I can die though, but I'm alive, Izuku responded. Everyone can die, kid. No one's immortal, Eraserhead said, looking at Izuku with something akin to worry on his face. Oh, but if I could die, I'd already be dead by now. Izuku shrugged, not really caring that he might be worrying the hero across from him. What? Are you like Deadpool or something then? Eraserhead asked, most likely not really thinking he was going to get a response. Oh, how wrong he was. Yep, Izuku chirped. If you think about it, he is. Like seriously, he's seen the Deadpool movies, and he's learned that his quirk is basically Deadpool's, minus all the unpackaged trauma. Don't get Izuku wrong, he has trauma, just not to Deadpool's level. The hero across from Izuku blinked slowly at his declaration of being similar to Deadpool. Maybe I broke him, Izuku thinks, tilting his head to the side slightly. Socks mewed up at him, wanting to be pet, and like a spell being broken, both hero and boy's thoughts came to a stop. Any woozles? What else is up? No more 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗧, Izuku asked, slowly running a hand through Socks' fur. That last comment just made me lose all my brain cells, the hero said, running a hand through his what looks like to Izuku's eyes raven hair. Fair. Izuku nodded wisely, closing his eyes. Don't you have to sleep or some shit? I could be asking you the same thing. You're like 10 and out late or early into the morning. Won't your parents be worried? The hero asked. Bold of you to assume I have parents, Izuku quips back. And even more bold of you to assume I need sleep. I sleep when I'm extra bored. Or when my body's healing. But the latter is more likely. Izuku mumbles the last part, not meaning for the hero to hear it. Let it be known that 𝗧𝗏𝗧 was definitely not concerned for the kid. They were talking about dying and not sleeping. The former just sounded like insomnia to 𝗧𝗏𝗧, but not. He's not entirely sure. And the latter makes it seem like the kid actually believes they're immortal. Which could be a possibility given the quirk era they live in. But full-on immortality should be impossible. There's limits to all kinds of quirks, and having one that's like Deadpool's, yes, he knows who Deadpool is, Hisashi. Power before quirks even existed sounded absurd. Because from what he knows, thanks to his random Deadpool obsession phase from his early high school years, Deadpool couldn't die, like at all. He'd eventually revive. But it took long periods of time. Ah, you who? Mr. Eraserhead, sir. The kid's voice pulled 𝗧𝗏𝗧 out of his thoughts. HM, he hummed in response. You zoned out for a bit. I think an old man like you should be setting more appropriate times to go to bed. Especially if you're going to be zoning out during conversations. The kid said, a teasing note to their voice. I'm not that old. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 grumbled in response. Sure you aren't. The kid said. Well, I gots to go. I've got important things to attend to. So you have fun getting old. The next thing 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 knew, the kid was parkering away from him, cat back on his shoulders. Sighing, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 stood and checked the time on his phone. 2:30 am. Sighing, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 acquiesced himself to the last long 30 minutes of his patrol. Arriving back home, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 immediately took his shoes off upon stepping into the 𝗓𝗏𝗏 and walked the way to his and Hisashi's shared bedroom after closing the front door. Without bothering to shower, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 made himself comfortable under the blankets, letting his husband snuggle into his back as he himself drifted off to sleep. Izuku didn't sleep that night. Morning. He's not sure about all the technical terms. Instead, he worked on more projects and trained his body to become fit for being an actual vigilante. He wasn't going to attract too much attention to himself, because being in the spotlight fucking sucks ass. But he was planning on drawing just enough for Hisashi to notice him. Or one of Hisashi's men. Maybe not even that. He's not sure, but he'll leave future Izuku to figure it out. He distantly wondered why Eraserhead kept trying to talk to him, but brushed off the thought with the excuse of the hero just trying to bring Izuku in and find out that he was the boy the hero was looking for. Oh well, looks like the hero's not getting what he wants anytime soon. Izuku has a man to hunt down. He's said that before, hasn't he? Oh well. He has a man to extract revenge on, so you're going to be hearing it a lot. Isn't that right, 𝗧𝗵𝗲? We've got to fuck up the man who fucked up our lives. Well, not your life because you're a cat, but my life. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 muted him loudly as Izuku landed another punch to the makeshift punching bag. I know 𝗧𝗵𝗲. He sucks ass. And not the clean kind. Like the kind of ass where the person doesn't wash it because it's gay to wash it. Izuku gagged at the thought. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 muted him again. It was like they were having an actual conversation. Except Izuku was a 10-year-old talking to a cat. Let's go work on more projects, Izuku exclaimed, pumping a fist in the air and walking back towards his inventing room. When Izuku got home from the weird questioning he had with Eraserhead, he had finally managed to finish his earbuds or comms device, whatever you want to call them, that hook behind your ear and bypass the eardrum. He had been working on them for the better part of a year. He had started making them to see if he could way before the thought of being a vigilante took hold of most of his thoughts. Just another project to occupy his mind when he would normally be sleeping. To have insomnia. What a wonderful side effect of his trauma and quirk. Just the best. He loves it. Totally doesn't miss actually needing to sleep at all. He goes to sleep every now and then just so he doesn't get too bored. But like, not needing to sleep is weird. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 muted him from where she sat on her stool. Yeah, I know 𝗧𝗵𝗲. You sleep all the time though, so you don't really get a say. Was Izuku talking to a cat? Yes, he was. Did he care? Not particularly. Izuku turned back to his earbuds. Yup, I'm calling them that. Meow. How dare you sass me? And hooked them onto the back of his ear, his shoulder-length curls covering them. Don't judge him. He hasn't had a haircut in a while. He's homeless. What did you expect? Izuku connected the earbuds to the phone he had found at 𝗬𝗏 Beach and fixed back in September of last year. Meaning he's only had the phone for 5 or so months. It was a work in progress, alright? He's 10 years old. Cut him some slack. He was working on fixing up a computer he had just found. Alright, now to just guess the password for the police database, Izuku said to no one in particular as he worked his way through the firewalls. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 mewed at him. No, it's not hacking. Especially if the password is K1TT3N5 and C0FF33. So shut your up. Izuku retorted. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 mewed at him again. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, is it really hacking if their password is that weak? Like seriously, these are adults. And they couldn't think of anything better than. Izuku stopped what he was saying and pumped a fist in the air. Fuck yeah, I got in. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 muted him almost in fond exasperation, like a mother with their child, and Izuku settled down. Do you have a quirk, 𝗧𝗵𝗲? Izuku asked, turning to her. Nah, that's a dumb question. Sure, animals have quirks, but a cat that I just so happened to find on the streets having one. Sounds like a plot device. He mumbled. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 wanted to roll her eyes. If only she had the ability to. Her kit isn't the brightest at times, but she cares for him nonetheless. She definitely did have a quirk. She's not exactly sure what to call it because she fully understands and comprehends what her kit is saying to her. But she also knows how her kit is feeling at certain times. It's exactly why she went up to him that night when she normally strays away from humans. She mews at her kit again. Kit, please stop doing things that are illegal. I do not want you to get arrested. It is also not safe. Although I don't particularly like your idea of becoming a vigilante, I understand your reasoning for it. I'm not going to stop guessing the police database's password, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. That's not fun. Her kit responds like he himself understands her meows. She doesn't think he actually understands her, but sometimes she thinks he does. And if it weren't for him already having, and what did he call it again? Immortality quirk. Yeah, that sounds about right. Immortality quirk. Then she'd think he could talk to animals. Which sounds absurd, but she's met a kit who could understand her before. She didn't stick around too long, but that's because of her own trust issues. Not because she didn't like the kit. Izuku, kit, please stop. I know you have insomnia due to your quirk, but please try to sleep. It is unhealthy for a kit your age to be awake all hours of the night. You won't grow taller at this rate. She wishes she could say. Instead it comes out as a meow. Yeah, I got it, Mom. Her kit joked. She purred and jumped onto his shoulder as he set his tools and gadgets down. He probably wouldn't sleep, but she appreciated her kit trying. She said so. Or technically mewed in his ear, but she feels he got the gist. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 woke up the next morning. It's 1 in the afternoon. 𝗧𝗪𝗧. Morning. After asking the kids some questions, to the smell of something coming from the kitchen. He couldn't quite place what the smell was, but it smelled good, so 𝗧𝗪𝗧 followed it down the hall to the kitchen. Just some takeout, babe. Nothing special. Hisashi says, handing 𝗧𝗪𝗧 his food. Though you probably shouldn't have it right when you wake up. Yeah, I'll be fine. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 says, sitting down at the table and eating his food. I gotta go to the station soon. Hisashi says, looking at 𝗧𝗪𝗧 as the raven-haired man bites into his taco. I thought you had the day off. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 said, confused. I did. But the guy who was going to be doing it today got sick all of a sudden, so they called me in. Hisashi said, taking a bite into his own taco. All right, I'll see you when you get home. I don't have patrol today. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 said, stretching after finishing the rest of his taco. All right, babe, Hisashi said, bouncing from his seat and taking 𝗧𝗪𝗧 and his trash to the garbage can. 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧 shout sees his husband off not too long after that and promptly goes to take a nap on the couch, not caring that he just woke up. Or he tries, but the interaction he had with, who he assumes is, Midoriya Izuku last night plays on his mind on repeat. He looks for anything that could give 𝗧𝗪𝗧 a hint as to the kid's identity. He finds nothing, but he drifts off, still looking for any small misplaced word or facial feature. Izuku sneezes as he works on a new project. Someone must be talking about him. It's been a year since he decided he was going to become a vigilante, and the now 11-year-old was excited to test out his projects while in the field for the first time. He adjusts his earbuds to the back of his ear and turns them on. He looked at himself in the glass windows of the offices to see if he looked fine. His outfit wasn't much, just a hoodie and jeans reinforced with Kevlar fabric and a black medical mask to hide his identity. He had thigh holsters over his jeans and chest holsters hidden under his hoodie to hold his weapons and inventions. With how poorly he's able to eat, given how he steals food from convenience stores, he's gained about as much muscle as one in his situation was able to. Which isn't much, but he supposes it's enough. Socks hops onto his shoulders and Izuku leaves the warehouse, heading down the street, further into the worst parts of the district. Also somewhere where he's heard rumors of Hisashi's friends have been spotted. He climbs the nearest fire escape when he gets to where he mapped out the start of his patrol route and pulls himself up onto the roof. Making sure Socks is settled comfortably onto his shoulders, Izuku begins his patrol. It's quiet, and he doesn't run into any crime until the later half of his patrol. He supposed it was all right, given he's just starting out, but he was beginning to get restless. So if he drops onto the offending man's shoulders harder than one would at the height Izuku dropped from, that's no one's business but his own. Oi brat, what do you think you're doing? The man growls as he pushes himself from the cement. Just stopping you from breaking and entering. Not a very legal hobby if I do say so myself. Izuku quips. Maybe try getting a job. Shut it, you damn brat. The man growls again. All right, is he like some dog or something? Why does he keep growling at Izuku? I don't see any physical mutations of a dog-type quirk. So why do you keep growling at me? Izuku asks, playing it off as an innocent question. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? The man turns on him, and oh shit. Izuku just made a big fucky wucky, didn't he? Welp, that's what he gets for antagonizing criminals. Exactly what it implies. Izuku, once again, antagonizes. All right, that's it. You're done for. I'm going to kill you. The man exclaims, running at Izuku at what he assumes to be full speed. Izuku dodges to the side, sighing. He begins analyzing and looking for a potential quirk on the man. Bigger than normal muscles, glowing gray eyes and bald. Though that last part may just run in the male side of his family and not related to his quirk. Oh look, his arm is growing in size. Must throw off his balance if he makes it too big. Ha, that's what she said. Sorry bud, can't let you kill me just yet. I have a bastard sperm donor to hunt down first. Izuku says, kneeing the man in the sternum and punching him in the throat. The man keels over, clearly not expecting the hit, even though he had come at Izuku, leaving himself wide open, and his arm shrinks back to its original size. Izuku sighs, so fucking done with life. Not even worth my energy. He grumbles as he pulls the man to the opening of the alley and ties him up to a lamp post on the side of the street. He should really get a sample of those quirk suppressants that the police use when rounding up criminals. Maybe he'll try getting caught just to see if he can snag some. Socks meows in his ear like she knows what he's thinking. Oh, don't worry. I'd only do it with a high probability of escape. As it is now, I don't have that. Izuku reassures the cat. He taps the earbud connected to his right ear and calls in the criminal. Yeah? Yeah, he's Izuku looks for a street name. Shit, he should really memorize these. Oh, he's near the Flower Play Bakery. Yup, tied up and everything. Tried to break into the bank across the street. Alright, bye-bye. Izuku ends the call and decides to leave a little note. He takes out a pad of sticky notes and pen, when did he get those? And writes a quick note for the officers on their way to take the man into custody. Hello, guys, quirk has something to do with muscle augmentation. He appears to only be able to change his muscles on one body part at a time. He shouldn't be too hard to handle. His eyes glow when he's activating his quirk, a little like Eraserhead, Spirit 3. He's not sure why he put a heart and winky face after his sign-off. But he did, and he doesn't feel like erasing it. And Spirit has a good ring to it. Shut up. He's bad at thinking up things on the spot. It was the first thing that came to mind. Well, let's go wait for the cops to arrive, Izuku says, climbing up the fire escape on the wall opposite the bank and perches himself on the side of the roof. He waits for the officers to arrive and cuff the man before he bounds away. That one officer had a cat mutation. Interesting. He'll look into it later. Izuku pushes away those thoughts to instead stop on a random roof and ask Socks a very important question. Did you stay on my shoulders that whole time? Socks only meows. Figures, Izuku says fondly, patting her on the head. Be careful on my shoulders. I don't want you to get hurt, Socks. Socks meows at him again and butts her head into his cheek. He giggles and continues parkering over roofs. Sakachi doesn't know what to think of the newest vigilante. They seem childish, but they took down a man with a muscle augmentation quirk and even knew Eraserhead. So of course the detective calls and said underground hero and informs him of the new vigilante, Spirit. He wonders why they chose that name. He'll find out soon enough and wish he never did. For now though, he groans as he does the necessary paperwork for the criminal Sansa and a newer recruit. Sakachi hasn't learned their name yet brought in. Kami, he hated paperwork. Izuku goes out again the next night. He'd been extra restless and Socks had kept meowing at him until he gave in and decided to patrol for a bit. He's become bored just tinkering with projects in his office. He doesn't know half the things he needs to be able to finish a good portion of his projects. But it's not like he can just go to school to learn the material. What do you think, Socks? Should I try online school or just go to a library and get the books I need? Izuku asked as he hopped from one building to another. Socks meowed in his ear. He's not sure why he always brings Socks with him, but her weight on his shoulders is comfort. Yeah, I need money for any type of schooling. A library would be better. You're so smart, Socks, Izuku praised, reaching over and patting her head once he stopped on a building. Socks purred and rubbed her face on his cheek. Izuku smiled, pulling his mask down so the night air could blow on his face. Socks meowed at him again, and he pulled his mask back up before jumping to the next roof. Well, he can think about what to do about his school situation later when he's back at the warehouse. Should I make you something that can translate your meows? Izuku asked, more so to himself than anything. Socks meowed in his ear. I'll take that as a yes, Izuku exclaimed before stopping on the edge of a roof and looking down into the alley. He wasn't really expecting anything, but something in his gut, and definitely not Socks' insistent meowing in his ear, told him to check it out. He's glad he did check it out, because as he looked over he made eye contact with a woman being held up against a wall and crying. Her eyes widened, and he put a finger over his mouth in a request to keep quiet that he was there. Her eyes closed in what he assumed was an agreement, and he then looked over at the man. He had his hand pressed against the woman's mouth, muffling her cries, and his hand was roaming up her body. Socks, Izuku whispered, crouching down. Socks dug her claws more into his hoodie, and when he felt the small prick of her claws on his skin, he jumped down, landing on the guy's shoulders. Normally Izuku's weight wouldn't be enough to push someone to the ground, but from the height he jumped from, and how the guy wasn't prepared for Izuku to land on him, the guy went down easily. What's up, dickwad? Why are you touching up on a woman who obviously doesn't like what you're doing? Izuku asked, not really looking for a response. He jumped off of the guy's shoulders before he could launch Izuku off. Izuku motioned for the woman to get to a different side of the alley and dropped into a fighting position. Brat, this doesn't concern you, the man growled, wiping blood from his odd-looking nose. Like hell it doesn't. You were touching up all over her, and she obviously didn't want it, so I'm not gonna let you do what you were hoping to, Izuku said, shrugging his shoulders, a silent sign to Socks to get off. How they had signs for each other, Izuku didn't know, but he wasn't going to question it when it helped during fights. She's my girlfriend. I can do whatever I want with her, the guy said. Now there's where you're wrong, and I'm gonna beat it into you until you get it, Izuku said, lunging at the man, aiming for his solar plexus. It's times like these where Izuku thanks his small 10-year-old stature. The guy aimed to grab Izuku, but he slid between the man's legs. He really needs to figure out a fucking name for this dude avoiding his arms. As he popped back up, he kicked at the man's ass and made him stumble. It wasn't a hard stumble that made him fall to the ground, but the man definitely missed a few steps. Fucking brat, the man growled. What are you, a dog? Growling at a kid. Are you a pedophile too? God, I've met pedos, and they are the weirdest people ever. Izuku rambles on, dodging lousy punches thrown by the man. Socks is over in the woman's arms, apparently comforting her. Did you know pedophilia is prevalent in less than 5% of adult men? You're a minority, and not a well-liked one at that. Got him, kid. Stay still, the man yelled. No, you're a pedophile, and I'm just a helpless minor. Why should I stay still for you? I don't want you to touch me. Izuku mocked, jabbing at the man's sternum. Missing but getting close. Gotta throw him off some more. I'm gonna kill you is what I'm gonna do, the man threatened. You can try, but I won't stay dead. Izuku sighed, shrugging his shoulders. Like hell you won't. The man lunged for him again and Izuku ducked. But instead of going under his legs like last time, he threw one more punch to the man's sternum, successfully knocking him down this time. Damn, not even a scratch on me, Izuku complained. He tied up the man with some zip ties, idly wondering why he didn't use a quirk, and walked up to the woman and Socks. Thank you so much. We broke up a couple weeks ago, and he's been following me ever since. I even moved to try and get away from him, but it didn't work. The woman thanked. Of course, ma'am, Izuku replied, leaning down a bit for Socks to jump onto his shoulders. Is that your cat? What's her name, if you don't mind me asking? The woman asked. Socks. Her name is Socks, Izuku easily answered. What can I call you? She asked again. You can call me Spirit, ma'am, Izuku said softly, mindlessly reaching up and petting Socks. Spirit? The woman suggested. Spirit, Izuku echoed. That makes sense. You're quick and silent like one, she said, nodding her head and smiling softly. You can also just call me knockoff Deadpool. Izuku shrugged his shoulders, still petting Socks. Okay, well, I think you should get going then. I already called the police while you were fighting, so they shouldn't be too far off, she said, looking down the street. Thank you, Izuku said, running off at the telltale of police sirens getting closer. Mika, she called back. Thank you, miss. Mika, was the last thing the woman heard as the boy raced off. Tilde. Well, that was eventful, Izuku said, stopping on a roof 3 blocks away. Socks meowed in his ear. You're right. Patrol's far from over. Let's go, Izuku said, jumping to the next roof. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 sighed. Spirit was out again, causing 𝗧𝗵𝗲 a headache. Adachi Mika, the victim Spirit saved, said they could also call the vigilante knockoff Deadpool. He hopes this doesn't go on for too long, and they get the vigilante in one of the rehabilitation programs soon. Maybe he should put Aizawa on the case. 𝗬𝗪 wanted to scream, however illogical it was to do that. Well, screaming wasn't really what he wanted to do, but it was the only way to describe what he was feeling besides bone dead tired. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had just put him on a new vigilante case. Said the vigilante's name was Spirit or something. He doesn't quite remember, but he's sure he'll remember it after seeing how the kid runs straight towards a man with a gun, not even batting an eye when the villain across from them shoots at them. The oddly familiar cat on the vigilante's shoulders doesn't even move when a bullet barely grazes its fur. So a reckless vigilante, he thinks, watching and gauging the vigilante's skills. It's a quick and seemingly effortless takedown. And then the vigilante is saying something to the cat that sounds along the lines of, "Geez, okay, Mom," after a soft meow echoes through the alley. The cat seems to respond in kind with a shake of the head. It looks oddly human, but oh well. Spirit, 𝗬𝗪 says, dropping into the alleyway, closer to the mouth of the alley than to the vigilante themselves. Eraserhead, Spirit replies, a teasing lilt to their tone. How do you know me? 𝗬𝗪 asks, because really, no one should know his hero name. That's for me to know and you too. Well, I don't know actually. What's the saying again? Spirit says, looking towards the cat on their shoulders. The cat meows at the vigilante. Right? Thanks, babe, Spirit says, patting the cat's head. Is that the cat's name? 𝗬𝗪 asks, wanting to hold the cat. It's a cat. Can you really blame him? Nope, Spirit chirps, patting the head of the villain they just took down, looking up at 𝗧𝗪𝗧, saluting with 2 fingers, and running off. By Eraser, 𝗧𝗪𝗧 watches as Spirit jumps onto the fire escape next to them and scales it until they're at the roof. Spirit doesn't stay long, and their figure disappears. The only thing that told 𝗧𝗪𝗧 they had even been in the alley was a sticky note on the villain's forehead. "Hey, took this guy down for ya. His quirk is being able to make someone hallucinate whatever he feels like making them experience by skin contact for roughly 8-10 minutes. Don't worry, I'm fine. His name is Takahashi Tsutomu, alias Halo. Connected to the villain Greed and the villain group 7 Sins. Spirit." 𝗧𝗪𝗧 wants to know how, exactly, the vigilante knew all this from fighting the man once. He doesn't plan on asking though, because he has a feeling the vigilante won't be staying with him for longer than they have to. But that's okay. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 can work on gaining their trust. Pulling out his phone, he dialed Tsukachi. The detective picked up on the second ring, his voice sounding dead tired. "You have another one?" "Yeah, but Spirit took him down," 𝗧𝗪𝗧 said into the phone. "Did they leave a note?" Tsukachi asked. "Yeah, do you want me to hand it off to the officer who comes to pick him up?" 𝗧𝗪𝗧 asked, looking back at the criminal. "Yeah, that would be helpful. We already have a folder filled with all of their notes. Some of them correlate to each other, while others don't. I think Spirit's looking for someone or something," Tsukachi said. "Sounds like it. Well, I'll keep an eye out for them," 𝗧𝗪𝗧 promised. "Thanks," Tsukachi said, hanging up the phone. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 tucked his phone away and waited for the officers to get to the alley so he could hand off the villain, and then most likely keep an eye out for the vigilante while he continued his patrol. He couldn't get the thought of how familiar the cat on Spirit's shoulders was, but in the dark alley he couldn't really see what the cat looked like. Izuku jumped roofs, Socks digging into his shoulders with her claws. It felt like a pinprick, if he was being honest. He's been through way worse, so he can ignore the claws of a cat digging into his skin. It'll heal anyway once she retracts them. "I hope he doesn't recognize you, Socks. Maybe you should stay home when I go on patrol," Izuku said, landing on the roof of their abandoned warehouse. He dropped down to the front and opened the door just enough for them to slip inside. Socks meowed at him. "Didn't think so." Socks butted her head against his chin and Izuku smiled. Socks was her own cat and Izuku couldn't control her. But Kami, if she ever got hurt while he was on patrol, he'd throw civility to the wind and go after the dick who decided to hurt his parent. Does Socks count as his parent? Sure, she looks after him in a way Mama used to, but she's a cat. Izuku's only 10 years old though, so he supposes it's fine if. A little sad that he views a cat as his mother figure. "At least, let me make you some kind of protection. I'd hate it if you got injured while out on patrol. And before you say anything, yes, I know you can protect yourself," Izuku says, looking Socks in the eyes. She seems to be reading his soul, and honestly, Izuku just wants to know if she has a quirk. Socks really loves her kit. He's smart, kind, a little brash, but overall a sweet kid. His circumstances that led to him being on the streets obviously weren't the best, but he's doing what he can with the things he has, even though it would be smarter to ask an adult for help. But she can't really blame him. They both have trust issues in regards to humans. "Kit, love, I do not need anything. Although I appreciate the offer, I do not think someone will come after me." Socks meowed at the kit. "You can protest all you like, Socks, but I'm making you this protection. It's just a precaution. Please don't make me watch another mom die." And oh, how that last sentence broke her heart. She purred, a wordless or meowless promise to not leave Izuku until he was ready. Her kit deserved the world, and she'd give it to him. If only he'd let her. But alas, he liked to take things upon his own shoulders and carry burdens young kits were not meant to carry. She wished she could hug her kit instead of just curling up around his neck like a scarf. But it will have to do for now. Instead of lamenting her lacking human features, Socks watches over her kit's shoulder as the boy makes new inventions, some small enough to fit in his pocket, and one that's obviously made for Socks. It looks like some kind of armor vest like she's seen other humans wear. The all-black color with yellow running along the seams reminds her of the hero they met earlier that night. Eraserhead, was it? Yeah, that sounds about right. Maybe he'll be good for her kit. Maybe he won't. Only time will tell. It's been 2 full rotations of all 4 seasons. Years is what Izuku calls them since Socks had decided to follow Izuku, her kit. Always her kit. Never anything less than her kit, and look after him in a way only a cat can. He's a little hard-headed at times, but she chalks it up to him growing into his own person. Even if it's being done on the streets. He's become what other humans call a Roman 6 vigilante, and admittedly she doesn't know exactly what that word means, but he's explained the human rules surrounding it. And she didn't like the explanation one bit. Like for instance, he could get arrested if caught. And how him using his quirk in public, even though he very obviously can't control, it is against human rules. She doesn't get how it could be against the rules to use something that's a part of you. But she accepts it for what it is because she's a cat and Izuku is her kid. He had also explained how if anyone found out that she has a quirk, although he doesn't know what it is, she would be taken away from him and experimented on. She'd rather die than be taken from her kid. And even then she'd rather not leave her kid alone. So when Izuku gets separated from her while on patrol, she admittedly freaks out. She doesn't know where her kid is, and it worries her. He heals quickly, she knows, but he can still feel pain, and she hates the thought of her kid being alone and in pain. But she acquiesces to waiting back at the den, and hoping that Izuku had just gotten lost. It's another full rise of the sun and fall of the moon when she begins to worry more because her kid never leaves for extended time without telling her where he's going and why. Bastet above, she hopes he's not kidnapped, or worse. With her mind made up, she stands and climbs her way up to the only opening in the den and crawls out. A mission in mind and determination set in her posture and eyes. Shouta Aizawa has come to expect a lot of things as an underground hero. But a cat he regularly sees on the shoulders of one very obnoxious vigilante, alone and at his front door, is not one such instance. "Hey girl, what's wrong? Where's Spirit? And how did you find where I lived?" is unsaid, but she gives him a knowing look. "Meow. I'm going to pretend like I understood what you just said," Shouta says, opening the door and inviting the cat in like she's an old friend. And he supposes that she kind of is, if he counts all the times he's seen her standing proud and protective on Spirit's shoulders as the kid fights. Moon Shouta doesn't know her name, but he figures it'll be alright if he gives her a nickname, trots into the Jenkin, and meows up at him once more. "What is it, Moon?" She must not like the name because she hisses at him before looking away like she's pouting. "Sorry girl, but I don't really know your name." It's an apology that would make him look insane to anyone who looked in on them. But that's fine. Kat seems to take it well because she chirps at him and trots further inside the apartment like she owns the place. Izuku's having the time of his fucking life. Note the sarcasm? Well, it's there, and he bathes in it. He's 11 with the height of a 10-year-old malnourishment, the internet had said when he had looked it up one day, wondering why he was still so small, and he's been kidnapped. It's amazing. The dumb fucks think he still has parents and are doing everything they can to find their numbers and hold him for ransom. They've even tried to intimidate him. But Izuku thinks they must be amateurs because their threats of, "We aren't going to feed you," and "You'll be sleeping with one eye open after we're done with you," are weak. Izuku's immortal. He doesn't need sleep, though he really likes to because it's fun, and he gets to time travel, and he could go weeks without food maybe, he's not sure. Socks never lets him get past 3 days of testing it out. But he would assume that being immortal means food intake doesn't affect him. He's probably wrong about the food, but oh well. He knows he can last at least 3 days without going hungry. Izuku loves his life now, he does. But sometimes he truly has to wonder what he did in a past life for fate, or whatever deity watches over this failure of a Sims game, to receive a shitty father, dead mother, and a quirk that doesn't let him die, but lets him feel pain. Izuku kind of just wants to die. But he's got plans, and he needs to carry out those plans, or the man referred to as Midoriya Hisashi will walk free while his mother sleeps below the earth. Hisashi does not get to live a free, happy life, while Izuku has to live without his mother. That's not how it works. Izuku's going to kill Hisashi, and then he'll find a way to kill himself. Probably with the help of his all-time favorite underground hero. After all, what's the point of living a life of immortality, where he'll never die, and will have to watch those around him socks? Always socks. Only socks. She's all he has left at this point. Die, and leave him alone. He doesn't even know if his body will stop aging, and that's the worst part. Because if his body does stop aging, when will it stop? Will it stop when his mind reaches the legal age of adulthood? Will he look like a child forever? That's what scares Izuku. Not dying, not being tortured, but watching Socks leave him, and not being able to leave Earth with her. Well, that got fucking depressing. Izuku drawls to himself in the quiet of the damp room. The wood on the walls is rotting, and there's maggots and other disgusting bugs on the floor and walls. Izuku even thinks that if he looks around and actually had good lighting, he'd find a few dead bodies. Of animals, mostly. Like rats and mice and whatnot. It's gross, but he's just been kidnapped, so who is he to complain? But he's so fucking bored. Like seriously. They couldn't have at least given him cards or something. Why does he have to be tied up here, in this disgusting room without entertainment? He understands not giving him anything sharp due to his unknown quirk. But cards aren't even sharp. They're made of cardstock and are prone to ripping, so even if he wanted to, Izuku couldn't saw his own wrists off. The inhumanity, honestly. He's not even sure how long he's been here. Maybe it's been a week, a couple days, who knows? Not him, that's for sure. God, he wishes he had a watch or something. Socks must be worried about him. Izuku groans into the dark of the room and stops when he hears shouting. The dumbasses have been near silent the whole time he's been here, and now they're shouting. Well, that's not suspicious at all. Maybe something interesting is going on upstairs. God, now he's just more bored. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 did not think he'd have to be fighting kidnappers just because of a kid and cat. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 doesn't mind taking down kidnappers. But the fact that a cat came to him instead of, oh, he doesn't know, an adult. Parents even. Well, it's strange and concerning, but definitely not the strangest. Cat meows at him from where she's standing on his shoulders as he fights his way through the men. A few get too close to her, and she lashes out, very obviously not caring if she catches vitals or not. To be fair though, they did take her owner kid. Does she see the kid as her child? Probably. And she seems like a very protective cat. And then 𝗧𝗵𝗲 thinks about who the owner of cat is. It's very obviously Spirit, the vigilante who's a little shit whenever he gets the chance, and wonders how Spirit managed to get themselves kidnapped. The kid's as slippery as a snake, and does literally anything to escape from capture by heroes and law enforcement. Maybe he should ask the people who kidnapped the kid how they did it. Unless he's able to catch the kid after this. No, that's unethical. And plus, although he'd never admit it to the kid's face, patrol nights are more interesting with the snarky little shit. Minus the insinuations of 𝗧𝗵𝗲 being a pedophilic necrophile. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 sighs and knocks out another guy before venturing deeper into the base. Ugh, I'm so bored. Spirit's voice sounds genuinely bored, and not like it's an act. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 has to hold back an amused smile at that. Damn brat. Spirit, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 calls down the hall. Razor. OMG, please let me out. It's so fucking boring in here. They didn't even give me any card games. Can you believe that? The audacity, Spirit says, voice way too upbeat and petulant for a kidnapping victim. Cat murps in his ear, digging her claws into his shoulder, urging him to go faster. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 doesn't dare stall any longer, not knowing what she might do to him should he keep her from her kid. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 just stops in front of the door, looking around for anything that would help him get Spirit out any easier. Cat meows loud and almost worriedly, and he hears Spirit gasp from inside the room. Did you seriously bring my cat here with you? Spirit asks, teasing. She's the one who notified me that you were missing in the first place. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 doesn't know the effect his words have on the boy inside the room. But Socks does, and she knows that her kid, her son, her child, is spiraling into thoughts that are less than healthy. Spirit doesn't respond for a minute or so as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 works to open the door. The kid sits in the middle of a very dark and rotting room. Bugs move around on the ground, and the only reason 𝗧𝗵𝗲 even knows they're there is because of the light filtering in from the hallway. Razor, Spirit exclaims. Glad to see you could join the party, but I think it's time to go. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 sighs but walks in further. The kid's wrists are tied behind the chair they sit on with ropes, though their feet are left untied. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 absently wonders why they didn't tie the kid's feet, but forces himself to focus on the task at hand. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 takes out one of his many knives and starts cutting away at the rope. The second spirit is free and on their feet. Cat is jumping off of 𝗧𝗵𝗲's shoulders and onto the kids, chirruping and meowing incessantly into their ear. Yeah, I know. Thanks, Spirit says. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 hides a grin in his capture weapon as he stands, hoping no bugs took his minute on the ground as permission to climb him. Spirit turns around, salutes him, and then freezes. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 squints, unable to read the kid's expression due to them not being in the light. Cat chirrups again and gives something to the kid that she didn't have before. Thanks, Spirit says as they take the item and slips it over the bottom half of their head. Ah, so they didn't have their mask. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 thinks it a wasted opportunity to learn their identity. But he also has a feeling that if he tries to peek at their face, he may never see or hear from Spirit again. Alrighty, thanks again, Razor, but I gotta bounce now, Spirit says. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 shoots his capture weapon out towards the vigilante, but a hiss from Cat has them ducking out of the way without looking. And then they're out of sight and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 knows it will be futile to try to chase after them. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 scowls, more angry at himself for letting the kid get away than at the kid themselves. sighing, 𝗧𝗏 heads back up the stairs. He'll send cops down here to check the other rooms just in case. But he doubts the thugs upstairs were keeping more than just Spirit locked up here. And anyway, he has to inform 𝗬𝗏𝗁 that Spirit, once again, got away. And with the help of a cat no less. Izuku sighs as he stretches out his stiff muscles. Maybe it hadn't been a good idea to roof hop when he had been sitting in one chair tied up for however many days it had been. But he needed to get away, and no one looks up. Well, most people don't. Specifically Hawks or other underground heroes. Socks meows in his ear, incessant, and almost scolding. Which isn't new. Izuku does a lot of things that he assumes Socks scolds him over. But since he cannot, in fact, read her mind or understand her, he cannot say for sure. A wet nose boops him in the cheek, and he turns his head slightly to look at her. 𝗬𝗏𝗲? Yeah, I'm hungry too. If Izuku didn't know any better, he'd say Socks just rolled her eyes at him. But cats can't roll their eyes, can they? He'd have to look it up, eventually. Izuku jumps to the next roof, heading home. He took a few detours just in case they were being followed. He slips into his warehouse. Once he feels there's little possibility of anyone following him, have to be careful after just being kidnapped and all, and takes off his mask. Do we still have instant ramen? Socks meows, jumping off of his shoulders and sauntering further into the warehouse. Izuku follows her without question as she leads him to their room. She pulls out one packet of instant ramen and looks up at him. Last one, he asks. A small nod. All right. Izuku takes the ramen and a full water bottle. Now he just has to find where in the hell he put his bowl and cutlery. So, you met Spirit? 𝗵𝗲𝗧𝗏 says. Yes, Aizawa says. True. And they were trapped in a room? Yes. True. And once you freed them, the cat that led us here left you? Yes. True. And then they both got away? Yes. True. And Spirit didn't tell you why they were tied up in the room you found them in? Yes. True. 𝗵𝗲𝗧𝗏 sighs, digging the heels of his palms into his eyes, tired from this whole night. Tired from the past couple days, to be honest. Everything is too much, and he needs a cup of spiked coffee. He stands from his desk and walks over to the coffee machine in his office, an apology gift from Aizawa years ago, because of some bullshit the hero got into when he was younger, of which both have chosen to not talk about ever again because fuck, it was a lot. Neither man says anything while the coffee is brewing, and Aizawa doesn't say anything when 𝗵𝗲𝗧𝗏 pulls vodka from the cupboard below the coffee machine and pours a fuck ton into his cup. Actually, the hero looks a bit longingly at 𝗵𝗲𝗧𝗏's cup of spiked coffee, but the detective doesn't offer him any, and Aizawa does not ask for any. This whole night is a wreck from the hero sitting in the chair across from his desk, coming in and claiming that Spirit was kidnapped, to actually finding out that yes, the vigilante was indeed kidnapped, and the kid's cat came to Aizawa for help. Thankfully, Spirit wasn't kidnapped for quirk trafficking reasons, and the kidnappers thought that they could get ransom money from the kid's parents, though they were never able to figure out the parents' numbers, which was concerning. Hopefully Spirit was okay, mentally and physically. Izuku went out early the next morning, Socks on his shoulders where she always is. She'd been extra clingy all night, which he fully understood, because he had been kidnapped, so it was obvious why she wanted to stay by his side. His plan for the day was to get more food for both him and her, as they had no more, as well as to just walk around, because Socks would have had a conniption had he cooped up inside all day. All plan, however, went out the window when he passed an alley and was dragged into said alley. Socks started hissing and angrily meowing at whoever the assailant was, and Izuku sighed, and then gagged silently as his nose caught wind of the smell of burnt skin. Shut your cat up or I'll do it for you, a raspy voice said from behind him. She'll quiet down if you let me go, Izuku said. She's very on edge, as just last night she had to rescue me from kidnappers. Silence other than the continuous hissing of Socks blanketed the alley, until finally the person let Izuku go. Izuku dusted off his clothes and socks. Hissing downgraded to a low growl. Do you need or want something from me? Izuku asked, turning around to face his assailant. Any money you have on you? I don't have any money, Izuku said matter-of-factly, which wasn't a lie. He had not a penny to his name, hence the homelessness. Then how do you have a cat? Rude. All right. Then how do you take care of? Wait, no, don't distract me. Just give me anything on you that I could take to a pawn shop. Sorry dude, but I don't have anything like that on me. That's why I'm on my way to steal from a chain food store. Not a family-owned food store, but one owned by big bad corporations. Izuku holds a finger up. Why? He's not sure himself. But it makes the blank confusion on his assailant's face all the more amusing. Wanna come with? What? No. I can't. That's illegal. And pulling me into an alley in broad daylight and threatening me isn't? Izuku asks. The person stutters and Izuku laughs. Nice to meet you, I'm Izuku. He holds out his hand. The person holds out their hand hesitantly, like Izuku might bite them if they touch him. 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗲. Right, 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗲. This is 𝗧𝗵𝗲. She is very protective of me and will. I'll kill you if you make one wrong move. I've seen her do it. So don't try anything. Right, okay? But why are you? 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧, no questions, let's go. Izuku grabs the man's wrist and pulls him out of the alley, dragging him to the store he was going to go to before he was so rudely interrupted. 𝗧𝗏 is unsure about this 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗲. First he pulled her kit into an alley, and then he threatened her and her kit, which, usually, is grounds for a good clawing out of the throat. But then Izuku had defused the situation, and now he's dragging the man to the store. It's strange, and she doesn't quite understand, but she thinks they might just have a new member soon. She hopes 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗲 is a good man because then her kit will have one more person to talk to. And if he's not, then, well, she'll do what she has to. 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗲 is not scared exactly, but the way the cat, 𝗧𝗏, keeps staring at him, he's getting there. It's like she's seeing into his soul, and it makes him uncomfortable. Like she can see the parts of him that he's locked up and ignored for the past 6 years. Like she's picking apart his very soul and determining whether she should claw his throat out or not. He really hopes she chooses the latter. 𝗧𝗏 turns her beady little eyes away from 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 and instead meows at the kid that's dragging him down the street, and he actually answers. And she fucking meows back. Like, holy shit, this kid is insane. First, he's dragging 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 with him, even acting like they've known each other all their lives, even though he was just threatened by him. And second, he's talking to a cat. In full-blown conversations. 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 is starting to think he picked the wrong kid to mug, and should have just stayed in his abandoned apartment room like he usually does. Let 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 reiterate that he's really starting to regret trying to mug Izuku. The kid's fucking insane. Like, actually insane. Like, should probably be in a mental hospital insane. 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 doesn't know how or why, but he's been staying in the kid's abandoned warehouse. How no one has found out that there is a literal child squatting in an abandoned warehouse is beyond him, and, honestly, he doesn't really want to think about it for the last few days, and so far what he's learned about the kid is 1. The kid has no sense of danger. Like, none at all. Big explosive metal thing he's working with, happily tinkering away until it inevitably explodes in his face, and he laughs it off. 2. 𝗧𝗏𝗏 really fucking does not trust 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲. Like, damn, he thought his sack of shit sperm donor was mean with the glares. But the glares this cat could give, and the way she always seemed to turn her nose up at him was something else. 3. And let him reiterate this. The kid is off his rocker batshit insane, and it's incredibly concerning. 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 thinks the kid might even beat the villains, like not the "I'm doing this to survive" ones that society deems as villains, but the villains who find pure, unadulterated joy in destroying and terrorizing civilians in insanity levels. And he's met some pretty awful ones on the street. 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 doesn't think any child should be like how Izuku is. The kid just casually trauma dumps for Kami's sake. Just in casual conversation. And then he just fucking speeds past it like he didn't just say what he just said. For instance, the first day 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 was here, otherwise known as the day 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 was kidnapped. Though not really, because he could leave any time he wanted to. But something kept him there, and not something physical. Just a goddamn feeling. He was just talking about who knows what, and the kid responded with, "Oh yeah, my sperm donor used to hit me all the time. Can you hand me that wrench?" And 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 did fucking hand him the wrench, because what was he supposed to do? The shock coursing through him after being hit with a casual trauma dump left him unable to say anything. And can anyone really blame him? What? 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 had asked after his brain stopped buffering. Izuku had hummed innocently like he had no idea what 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 was asking. 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 didn't try asking again, having a feeling that the boy wouldn't answer him anyway. Instead, 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 continued to watch as Izuku built something and 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗃 lied curled up, pressed against the kid's thigh, unconcerned and unworried with the sphere-looking thing. 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗲 thinks it could be a bomb, but it also could be something innocent, even though the amount of times it's exploded says otherwise. Eventually Izuku finished whatever he was working on and stood up, followed by 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗃 standing and stretching before she scampered off after the kid. "Time to go out," Izuku said. Voice full of some emotion. 𝗬𝗊𝗍's sure he hasn't felt in a long while. He thinks it might have been excitement. 𝗬𝗊𝗍 sat, unsure what to do as he watched the kids scurry around the room they were in, picking random shit up. What said shit did? 𝗬𝗊𝗍 had no idea, and he didn't particularly care to find out, and then leaving the room, leaving 𝗬𝗊𝗍 alone. Not even Sokk stayed, walking behind the kid's feet everywhere he went. Seriously, there was not a time that 𝗬𝗊𝗍 had stayed here that he had seen Sokk more than a meter away from the kid. Sokk did not like this new man, 𝗬𝗊𝗍, living with her kid. Something just felt off about him. She couldn't place her paw on it, but there was something he was hiding from her kid, and she just hoped it wasn't something bad. She smelled something sad wafting off of him in waves. Yet that didn't stop her from not trusting him. Just because a human was sad didn't mean they were trustworthy. The man even tried to mug her kid when they first met. How could she possibly trust him? And even then, at any moment this man could up and leave her kid, causing him even more mental pain. It's barely been a week, but she knows that her kid has already gotten semi-attached to the man. Sokk watched as her kid put on his shoes, tying the laces before standing up, and then jumped up onto his shoulders when he was stood upright. She got comfortable, carefully digging her claws into the fabric of his clothes, but not into his skin. She didn't want to hurt him after all. 𝗬𝗊𝗍, surprisingly, came to see her kid off. A tense smile strained his lips, pulling at the forming scars that looked like they hurt. Yet he hesitantly lifted a hand to wave by. Her kid smiled so bright he was practically shining, and waved enthusiastically back at 𝗬𝗊𝗍. 𝗬𝗊𝗍 hesitated but chuckled after a moment. "Don't burn the house down," her kid said, amusement in his tone, as he started to walk away. "This doesn't qualify as a house," 𝗬𝗊𝗍 called after him. Something in Sokk said that maybe, just maybe, her kid would be safe with this man. Izuku giggled as he jumped roof to roof. 𝗬𝗊𝗍 was a funny guy. Strange? Sure. But he was also funny. He was so tense around Sokk probably because Izuku said she'd kill the man if 𝗬𝗊𝗍 so much as hurt him in any way, and yet he still stuck around. Izuku doesn't know why the man was sticking around. But it was actually nice to have another human around that he could have actual conversations with. Sure, he could somehow understand Sokk, but it felt nice to be able to talk with 𝗬𝗊𝗍. "Hey, Spirit." Izuku turns midair as he jumps to the next roof to see Eraserhead running after him. Izuku no, he's Spirit right now lands, skidding back on the floor of the roof. Eraserhead finally lands on Spirit's roof, walking over to the vigilante. Izuku readies himself to run away should he need to. Hold on, Eraserhead says, hands raising in a placating gesture. "I'm not going to try to capture you. I just have something for you." Spirit raises an eyebrow. Not that the man could even see it, but it's the thought that counts. 𝗧𝗪𝗓 slowly reached into his capture weapon, grabbing the prepackaged food he bought at a convenience store early on in his patrol and holding it by his side. 𝗧𝗪𝗓 starts not exactly sure if he should tell Spirit he was married or not. "Husband," Spirit says. "Yes, my husband suggested I should give you a snack." "Wait. How did you know you're married and gay?" "Simple, I just do," Spirit said, shrugging their shoulders. "No wait, but how?" 𝗧𝗪𝗓 said, stressing the last word. "It's not public knowledge and most of my closest colleagues don't know." "So how do you know?" "Don't worry, it's fine. No one else but me knows and I haven't told anyone either. Your secret is safe with moi," Spirit said, flamboyantly bowing towards 𝗧𝗪𝗓. Spirit then bounced up and ran off, leaving 𝗧𝗪𝗓 alone on the rooftop, two prepackaged onigiri still held in his hand. 𝗧𝗪𝗓 looked down at the onigiri and sighed, putting the one meant for Spirit back in his capture weapon and opening the other to eat. 𝗧𝗪𝗓 wondered if he should maybe approach Spirit like they were a stray cat he was trying to befriend. Slow and steady, then the vigilante might start to open up.